Imagine you're back in your childhood bedroom with your childhood console. In whatever generation you grew up in, you're probably thinking of a specific game, maybe a specific day, maybe a specific face, cutscene, or area. Your life was simpler all those years ago, and you look back to it not only for nostalgia, but to wonder why those times felt so beautiful. Think back to the sounds, the gameplay, that rush of dopamine when you first beat that game. What game are you thinking of? Could there be multiple of those games? And how long has it been since you last experienced that game? It can all just make you wonder, what makes a game timeless?
Come on in. It's almost another world here in the video arcades of America.
Video games basically originated from arcades. In the 70s and 80s, video games were on a transition from arcades all the way to your living room, in a teeny tiny box such as the Atari 2600 or the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. Although I doubt anyone watching this grew up in this 8-bit, blocky, pixelated era, listen to this sound. Or maybe this one. It sounds familiar, right? The games that started it all are revolutionary. Even with a simple sound such as those two, you can immediately picture a short Italian man committing genocide against turtles and love chasing monsters. But what makes that wild idea so iconic? Could it be the fact that our parents and grandparents all around the world kind of grew up with these games? Could it be that humans are just kind of murder-loving monsters themselves? Honestly, it could be a mix of both. That whole genocide against the turtle army is kind of fire, I'm not gonna cap. I think it's because the world hadn't seen anything like it at the time. It was entertaining, had a variety of levels to play, providing more memories, and could be enjoyed in the comfort of your own home. That paired with the signature sound and graphics became a game to be remembered for generations. I know it's so expected and cliche to be talking about the Super Mario Brothers, but to this day, ask anyone if they can name this little man, and they'll tell you his name. You don't get that popularity just by doing nothing. The fact that there are hundreds of spin-off games in this franchise shows you how much people love that original game. It's to the point where Nintendo themselves still pack the game with references to the original. Mario Brothers basically shaped the generation of gamers, and some of these people love the game enough to have it be their child's first game experience. Even with more advanced games coming out over time, that game remained what people think of when you mention video games. Over time, games started to advance with graphics and stories. There are multiple games that you can think of that are considered timeless, works of art, and masterpieces. No, I'm not just gonna keep on riding the Mario Brothers.
Whoa, pause on that.
I mean, there's so much more games to explore and discover what made them so iconic, and what made them change this form of media forever. Minecraft. It wasn't the first game I played, but this is probably the most universally loved game of my generation. The community is not loved. I think it's always kind of a dumpster fire. With its simplistic ideas, gameplay, and graphics, they kind of had to innovate in a new way, but it wasn't necessarily their innovation itself. It was yours. Minecraft is not just a game, it's an experience. Each time you play, it has something new to offer. You can play it in basically any way you want. Like, yeah, I can be a destroyer of worlds using technology and jails to control villagers and animals as my workers, but what's stopping me from building an adorable pink little house? If you bully this house, I will cry, so technically you can stop me from doing that. But from beating this game in under an hour with complex and technical strategies, my records are just a measly 4 hours, but I wasn't cheating. To creating a world that is still progressing even at the 10,000 day mark. Although the game's world generation technology itself is very impressive and pretty innovative, especially for its time, it's the player, you, that truly determines your experience with it. And besides getting spammed with arrows and blown up by creepers, it's truly a one-of-a-kind, good experience, no matter what way you choose to play it. I found that nostalgia plays a huge factor into how a game starts getting perceived as a masterpiece. We'll talk more about that in detail later, but right now, let's reminisce back to a younger version of you and your first experience with this game. If you haven't been living under a rock for the past, 14 years? You've definitely played Minecraft before. Think about your earliest memories of that game. Think back to the sounds, the old textures, the first time you found diamonds, the first dog you tamed. You know, unless you had your friend join you and they ended up blowing up your whole world, you probably had a good experience. And even if your 3-hour monument got blown up by your friend, think about how funny that memory was. Yeah, you might have been frustrated at the time, but in hindsight, the nostalgia definitely turns this into a fond memory. Think about the last time you spoke to that friend. Are you still in contact with him? I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent on nostalgia, but let me give you a personal connection. My first time playing Minecraft. I'm not gonna lie, I was low-key a baby, 4 years old. Yeah, I was probably still learning my ABDs. Still probably my greatest achievement, but my first world on Minecraft, that was probably when I was like 6. All those years ago, I was very obsessed with this small YouTuber, DadTM. You might know him, I don't know. It's not like he was the king of Minecraft YouTube at one point, right? There was a series of episodes with him and Dr. Treors in an iron and gold lab, and not gonna lie, seeing that lab, I kinda wanted to one-up the man. So there I was, in my silly little world, simultaneously learning a duplication glitch. And yeah, I made a whole house out of diamonds. I thought it was the coolest kid to ever live, even cooler than the kids with the fully galaxy-themed Roblox avatars. The house was garbage, right? But it wasn't about the house. Even though it had yellow carpets that I pretended was gold, it was actually more about how fun the experience was. As a little kid, I'm going down into a cave, getting diamonds, using a glitch to duplicate the blocks like there was no tomorrow. I remember the moment I finished building, my thoughts were, damn, I could really do this architecture stuff, dude. Like, this house is actual heat. What the hell? That memory will always have a special place in my heart. I was a little kid building a house in a game on my own. The sounds, the graphics, how hot the tablet was getting. I mean, it felt like I was holding lava. Looking back to it, it just makes me laugh every time I think about it. Time flies. I'm not 6 anymore, and I'm not building a diamond house anymore. I'm building pink houses. Minecraft is actually truly a one-of-a-kind game. Paired along with updates every now and then that change the way you play, it's still one of the biggest games in the entire world. Taking a break from nostalgia, another core component to this could possibly be accessibility. Tetris, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Galaga, even Doom. Yeah, that game can be played on a calculator, dude. These names are synonymous with video games, and I don't think it's just because they were fun games for the time, but it was also primarily due to the fact that they were pretty accessible. They weren't just in your home, but also in a lot of places you would go to. Yeah, it wasn't just arcades that had them though. It was supermarkets, swap meets, laundromats. If you actually go outside right now instead of sitting down and cranking 90s in Fortnite, you might find one. This form of video games is dying. It's kind of sad. It doesn't mean that the names are dying. I mean, some kid recently was just the first one to actually beat Tetris, and technically that game is the highest selling video game of all time. This form of media dying out means that people that don't play video games aren't really gonna have small opportunities to try Pac-Man. And maybe that's a good thing because the ghosts are a little scary. I don't know though. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Galaga are still synonymous with video games as a whole, but their original intended way of playing them is kind of fizzling out. The accessibility of these games back then from arcades and whatnot, it really pushed gaming into new territories and shaped people to really love video games. In that sense, they're pretty timeless. Works of art in a form of media that to this day still keeps advancing. In the past decade, there's one specific game I can't go without mentioning. Red Dead Redemption 2. This game has been out for almost 6 years now, and that game has one of the best stories I have ever witnessed. Personally, I've never played the game. I have watched someone play it, however. The immersion definitely boosts the game and the way you experience it, but the emotion, it really carries through even if you're just watching someone play it. You can tell that Rockstar Games really cared about the way you play and perceive Arthur Morgan. They found a way to shape a story around Arthur while making you feel all the emotions he's going through. Arthur Morgan will go down as one of the best video game protagonists, and it's no doubt that Red Dead Redemption 2 will go down as one of the best video games ever created. When a story has that much immersion, cinematic moments, and touching dialogue that even TikTokers use for their sad, quirky audios, you're bound to get an unforgettable game. It's something that even watching from a distance makes you feel immersed. Now, another game that made me cry like it was an emotional movie, although partially because of nostalgia, is this game right here. Super Mario Galaxy. This story is not that immersive, and matter of fact, the story itself isn't even what makes it so impactful. The story itself is still just kind of an Italian murderer trying to get his princess that keeps cheating on him, but in space this time. Yeah, it's kind of sad, not gonna lie. The impactfulness is more about how the game makes you, the player, feel. The sound in this game is actually so beautiful. Like this music right here, it makes you feel like you're a hero, like a hero that loves killing turtles. And this one right here screams final battle. But this one right here, it gives kind of a serene, sad vibe. And then you got crazy, fast-paced music like this. It really makes you feel like you're on this mission to save your cheating princess. And as simple as that is, it immerses you. Super Mario Galaxy was the first game in the franchise to have an entire orchestra illustrate its music. All of the music in this game was made and composed by Koji Kondo and Mahito Yokota. And fun fact, the soundtrack wasn't actually going to be this dramatic. It was actually supposed to be more lighthearted until it was changed because it needed to feel more cinematic. The way the music itself kind of tells a story for you, or how it can pull your heartstrings sometimes, it gives the immersion without straightforward altering the gameplay. But it's not just the music in this game that gives you this feeling, it's also the context that you gain from this character right here. Rosalina was first introduced in this very game, and throughout this game, as you progress, you find out her story in this room right here. It's so simple, yet so beautiful, and it makes you feel kind of emotional paired with its music. At the end of the day, it changes nothing about the gameplay itself, but it impacts you as the player, understanding why the Lumas are so important to her, and it builds a connection with all these things around you. Sadly, at the end of the game, spoiler alert, we understand the Lumas' purpose. They basically transform into power stars and even their own galaxies. And this talk with Rosalina at the end of the game kind of gives you a sense of relief that the Lumas who you grew to love are not fully gone, because it's right after the Lumas all basically sacrifice themselves into this black hole. Yes, I cried at that part when I was a kid. This kind of foreshadows a sequel as well. See, this form of storytelling is so unique. Without any audible dialogue, it makes this game so special because it immerses you in so many different ways. The older I get, the more I realize what a masterpiece this game truly is. It's so unique, so heartfelt, and yet so cinematic while still maintaining its simplicity. The way it all comes together in this Mario game of all things, it truly makes it timeless. I don't want to make this video too long, but the answer kind of boils down to 3 things. One of these is obviously nostalgia. I can continue to give thousands of reasons as to why this contributes to a game's long-term success, but I'm not going to. You heard my voice speak about this for too long. Another reason is obviously innovation and accessibility in and outside of your own home. It truly shaped this form of media more than you might realize. It keeps their name, their sounds, and the popularity in turn alive. And the third is how the game makes you feel through immersion, storyline, and even the soundtrack contributes to that, as seen in Super Mario Galaxy. Games that make you feel like you're the main character keep you hooked, and you remember them like you were basically inside of the game. At the end of the day, it all comes back to how you remember it, what your first experience with the game was like. And when a game ticks all of these boxes with basically no flaws, the game is timeless. This is my first video in this style, so I hope you enjoyed either way.